So if you've been in the 200-hour program and you have all of this stuff or any of this stuff, go ahead and grab your fascia tools. If you don't have the actual balls, the vinyl balls, you can use rolled up socks. They work really well. So if you have a couple of wool socks or some cotton socks, and maybe ball them up, and you can use those instead of these balls. And then with the yoga blocks, I have 3 here. You could get by with using some pillows or some couch cushions. You don't need this at all. This is just for me to explain tensegrity to you with. Perfect. Okay, and then just some space around you. The first thing that I want to go through, some of you are new and some of you are really used to this concept, but especially for those of you who are new, I want to go through tensegral range so you can get a sense of what that means and then how that feels in your body. So what we'll start with is just standing anywhere. So you have your feet starting with about hip width apart. And then what we'll explore is a stability stance. And this is going to be the one that we come back to in between all of our poses. And this is really, it's a little bit of an experiment. We kind of go inside out to see what your stability stance is, which yours is probably going to be different than mine. So start with your feet about hip width apart. And then if you just sway a little bit and twist and swing a little bit, and what we're tracking for is see if you can get a felt sense of stability in your stance. A really great way to describe it is if someone were coming up, someone were running up to you and bumped into you. Would you really easily knock over, or do you feel like this stance that you have would allow you to kind of maintain your stability? Or if a big gust of wind kicked up. So try it in a few different positions. Bring your feet all the way together, maybe just as a comparison. And then do that little experiment. Imagine a big gust of wind and see, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stable do you feel with your feet all the way together? And then with your feet quite wide, how stable? And so what we're looking for with this first stance is just where you feel the greatest sense of stability. Okay, we're going to start here. We'll rock a little bit on our feet, rocking forward and back. And I want to begin with a little bit of a mindfulness-based movement with some breath awareness. And this one is really just to help get you started in your practice. It's a really great way to kind of arrive on your mat. So all we're doing with this one is bringing the arms up and bringing the arms down. Take maybe two more cycles, just noticing what that's like. And then the next piece of it is to synchronize your breath rate with the movement of your arms. So we're going to see if we can match the timing of the arms going up with the amount of time it takes you to breathe in, and then the timing of your arms coming down with the amount of time it takes you to breathe out. If it helps you to close your eyes, you can go ahead and close your eyes so that you can really take time to synchronize this movement and breath. And if raising the arms all the way up isn't something that's comfortable for your arms or your shoulders, you can go, that would be a tensegral range thing, which we'll cover in a bit, but you just go as far as what is comfortable for your shoulders and arms. You might vary it a little bit or find a way to really tailor it to yourself. But the main thing, not how high you go with the arms, but the main thing is getting that timing to match. So the up with the inhale, the down with the exhale. If the arms get tired, you might want to dial it back a little bit, something smaller. I'll let you play with it for 30 seconds or so, but I just want to say one more little piece, which is that if you do notice your arms getting tired and uncomfortable sensations are coming up, that's a really good piece of information to kind of store away for later. But for now, see if there's a way that you can get the movement of your arms to be to the degree where it doesn't have your arms feeling burny or uncomfortable, which might mean that your movement is now something like this, which is all good, because remember the goal is that we're synchronizing breath and movement. The goal isn't how high we lift the arms. And then you can bring the arms into just a really light little shake. So if you were here last week, we talked about doing this little bit of a shimmy movement where we get a very small movement, but we see if we can get it going a little bit fast. And you can do that with the legs as well. So you can do arms and legs together. And I want to do one more little arm thing. Does everybody have something you can hold in your hand? It could be your socks or a yoga block or anything. I'm going to use my little balls for it. So just have that handy. This is another one that's going to involve a little bit of mindfulness. So you'll probably notice you have to kind of really focus on what you're doing. But we'll do it one arm at a time. But the movement is we're going to take the hand and we're going to draw, I kind of think of it like finger painting. So we're going to draw like a sideways figure 8. And then just get the feel of that movement. This is really good for your shoulder joints. But we're going to add a dimension into this practice that's going to really help with proprioceptive awareness. So get that going with the second arm just to get a feel for it. So again, you're just kind of like finger painting 8s, sideways 8s. And then see, can you now keep your palm up through the whole pattern? And here's where holding something can be really helpful. So if you actually now hold your ball in your hand and draw your sideways 8, yeah. And so how this becomes proprioceptive is that I really have, that's the sensory system I have to really recruit in order for the ball to not fall out of my hand. Okay, and you can switch. So we're still drawing that sideways 8, keeping the ball upright. And then if you want to get really fun with it, you can have one in each hand and do it at the same time. think we lost one of our people. So you can see I'm bringing the pink ball on top and then the blue on top. So I'm alternating each one, but you don't necessarily have to do it that way. And you can also create smaller 8s so that they don't cross at all. And one of the ways to really work with the proprioception is to also bring the ball behind where your peripheral vision so you can't track it with your eyes anymore. So to kind of bring it as far back as you can behind you. And I'm just throwing out a whole bunch of like menu options right now for different ways that you can play with this. Don't feel that you need to do all of them all at once, but maybe more to pick something that feels a little bit fun. And the fun element might get you kind of forgetting about the shoulder, the movement in the muscles a little bit. So you might want to just track that and see, are the shoulders unhappy with you? And if so, can you dial it down a little bit, make the 8s a little bit smaller? You can certainly go in the same direction. Okay. And then you can let the balls go. And I want to go back to this idea of tensegral range, and this time we're going to do some of the yoga poses that will be a little bit more on the lungy side. So I'm going to go sideways, actually. I think you'll be able to see me a little bit better. So if we do kind of like our traditional warrior one, it's a forward lunge. So we bend into the front leg and we bring the arms up. So let me just show you. This would be something like a traditional warrior one. But what tends to happen if we look at a picture book of warrior one and say, okay, I'm going to do that, what tends to happen is we come out of our tensegral range really quickly in order to try to match our body to this picture. And so when we work with tensegral range, we want to kind of track from the inside out. So how that would look is you would start with stepping the feet apart, and it doesn't have to be really far at first. And then as we start to go into that forward lunge, what we're looking for is what's the degree that I can go into my lunge without losing my tensegral range. So that would be that felt sense of stability that we had in that first movement. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to explore this for a second so that you can try the legs really wide and at a deep lunge. And then imagine that big strong wind is coming up behind you. Do you feel stable with your legs good and far apart? If not, try bringing them closer together. Or if that stretch sensation is really big, that's another way that that can take us out of tensegral range. Also, those of you who are new to this concept, the word tensegrity is tension and integrity. And the key in this practice is the integrity part. You'll know you're in that integrity because you'll actually feel that there's an integrity to the position you're in. So we're just tracking for felt sense of stability. Okay. So for me today, that's about here. So you can see that that's quite a bit different than when I just kind of demoed the traditional warrior one. Some days my feet might be further apart, but here's where I'm still in, well, maybe a little further. Here's about where I'm in my tensegral range. So I'll invite you to try that on both sides. You might even be like here with it, and the arms might be further back versus all the way up. Okay, so once you have that, get it sort of, make a snapshot of it. And then we're gonna do a second pose. And this pose is called the half airplane. So we're going to bend forward and put more weight into the front leg, and we're creating a straight line on the whole back side of the body. I'll show you with the other leg. So I'm leaning forward. I'm just kind of avoiding leaning forward kind of with a rounded shoulder. I'm kind of just leaning my whole body in a straight line forward. So then with that second pose, we're gonna get a sense of where's my integrity? Like how much of a bend can I do where I'm really maintaining that felt sense of integrity? That was too far. And try that one on both legs. Okay, so everybody got where, it doesn't have to be exact, but you have a sense of where, how far you want to go, and you've got your tensegral range. Give me a thumbs up if you've found it. Good, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Okay. So now we're gonna put those two poses together into a mini flow. And we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the arms, where we're gonna time the one movement with the inhale and the other movement with the exhale. So how that's gonna look is I'm gonna come back to that warrior one in my tensegral range. And this is the one where we're gonna inhale on. And then I'm gonna go into my second one, my airplane, as I'm exhaling. And then back to the warrior one on the inhale, airplane on the exhale. So if you're new to this style of yoga, there's a lot going on right now. We're kind of doing a brand new movement. We're trying to coordinate it with the breath. So what I would say if you're brand new is don't worry about the breath part of it if that makes it too many things to focus on. Rather just focus on going from one position to the other position, seeing if you can hold on to your tensegral range through the whole way so that you're not going outside of that window where you're really feeling a felt sense of stability. And then just once you've got it and you want to take it more into that breath piece, go ahead and work on synchronizing it up with your breath. And feel free to switch legs just when you're ready. I'll give you maybe 30 more seconds or so. And so a couple things, if you're noticing that your body is fatiguing, or you've kind of lost that felt sense of integrity, maybe do a quick recheck and see, am I actually still in that tensegral range, or have I gone out of integrity? Am I going too big with my movement? Am I stretching too far? Is there anything being strained? So just checking all of that, because you can always dial it back. Or if you're bored, you might want to increase the challenge just by a little bit so that you get it to that kind of just right. Okay. So if that's feeling finished, then you can come on back to standing in that neutral stance where you're in your stability stance with your feet about whatever distance feels right. And we're going to do a bit of a side-to-side swing. With this one, you can also combine it with a little bit of the tapping that we get into a little bit more in the 200 hour. But when you're swinging the right arm, you can tap the left hip with the right hand. And the tapping just really helps with the nervous system. It helps to bring us into a space of regulation. So it's optional. You don't have to do the tapping. You can just swing. And then coming back to neutral. I also like to do a little bit of rebounding in between poses as well. So this is just, we did this last week. If you were here, it's just a little really light bounce. A good way to do it is to imagine maybe you're standing on a trampoline or on something soft, and that's great. Yeah, someone's got a bouncy ball, that works too. And the idea with the bouncing is to get it, again, it's a small movement that's rhythmic and repeats, and we want to keep it going for 30 seconds, a minute-ish, and these movements are really helpful for regulating the nervous system too. So about 10-15 more seconds. Did you have a question, Janet? I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're wanting to, might have to type in the chat or something.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What I was saying is I can't stand and bounce like that.
Oh, yeah. So there's lots of ways to sit and bounce. So perfect.
Sitting on a 55-inch ball.
Yeah.
And I find that I can do a lot of those kinds of exercises.
Perfect. Yeah. So go ahead and just modify anything we're doing just so that it fits what your body is needing. How is everyone else doing? Because I know we're sort of all at different kind of starting out points. I'm seeing thumbs up. Do you want to do another little mini flow like we just did, focusing on tensegral range? That'd be a good one for you. Okay, so let's do, this time we'll do it as a side lunge. So this, in kind of traditional yogi speak, we're going to flow through the warriors. But first we want to find that tensegral range within the warrior. So we'll start with taking the legs apart and tracking for that felt sense of stability. See if you can get a sense of where that is for you with the legs wide. As often if we take the legs too wide, then it will take us kind of outside of that sense of integrity. And if we're not wide enough, then that can also make us feel like once we lunge, we're not quite in that sense of integrity either. So once you've got that, we're going to turn one foot all the way out to one side and go into a side lunge. So this would be like our traditional warrior two. But what's fun is that when you start your warrior two with that tensegral stance and then you go into your lunge, you might find that your degree of bend is going to be different than if we just tried to go into like that, you know, kind of traditional cueing is like bring your knee over your ankle, bring your leg to a 90-degree bend, but that's often quite a bit too far out of someone's tensegral range. Okay, I'll let you play with finding your warrior two tensegral range. I'll just go ahead and read this comment that somebody's left me. Oh, should you feel no stretch? Good question. How I will answer that for the purpose of what we're tracking for today is, so here's the litmus test. The amount of stretch sensation you notice, it can be there, but are you able to stay present with the pose? So that's just a really good little way to gauge. If I'm coming into my warrior two and then I'm creating all these uncomfortable sensations, chances are I'm going to kind of check out a little bit. I'll probably leave my window of tolerance, maybe a little bit. Maybe I'll still be kind of here, but that's a really good way to see, are you able to really be with this position? Can you experience it, or do you find you want to kind of check out? So that's as far as the stretch sensation. Go ahead and let yourself feel that, you know, that familiar feel of stretch, but also track your nervous system. Okay, so this is one position. And then the second position is that we go into a side bend. So you can have your hand on your knee, or you can have your forearm on your knee, or you can even just be kind of like hovering and going into a little bit of a milder side bend. The idea here, so again, track, what's the degree of side bend? That just feels really good. It might be light stretch sensation you feel, but more than anything, we're tracking for what's the experience? Are you able to be with this position? Do you have that felt sense of integrity? Do you still have that sense of stability? Is it still with you? Okay. That was position two. This time we're going to do a little flow with three positions. So let's go position three. And this would be, in yoga terms, this would be our exalted warrior. So where this time we're coming into a side bend the other way. So I'm still bending that right leg, but the side bend I'm going towards my left side. Perfect. Okay. So play around with getting tensegral range on all those three positions, and I'll just go through them again. So warrior two. Then we go side angle. And then we do the exalted warrior, so it's just a side bend the other way.
So where should you be experiencing your stretches?
Like where should I be feeling it?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be feeling more than just stretch. So probably your inner thighs. You're also probably feeling some kind of like muscle engagement types of sensation in the quads and in the glutes. Lots of legs, but we also want to be feeling into that side body. It's one of the benefits of this sequence is that we are actually engaging that whole lateral line. So the side of your ribs, side of your waist. But one thing I'll say is that when we talk about feeling it, whether you feel stretch sensation or not, you're still getting the openness through that lateral chain. So if I come in, so if I feel like, okay, here I feel the stretch, it's great, but I'm not in my tensegral range. I've gone out of it. So am I still getting benefit if I do the pose within my tensegral range where I don't feel stretch sensation in my side? Yes, and more. So don't worry about, like, the stretch doesn't equal the benefit. Stretch sensation, think of that as a whole separate thing. So it's just getting that openness through that side of the body and staying in that tensegral range. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so let's get that on the other side. Those 3 positions. And I often find, like, because I have a knee injury on one side of my body that I don't have on the other side of my body. So when I track my system and I look for that tensegral range, it's actually different on my tensegral range on my right is different than my tensegral range on the left. Don't worry about that if you're new to this work, but just know that that can be a thing. It doesn't have to be exact, like side to side. They don't have to look the same. So the side bend, and again, you're just tracking for what's the degree that you can come into the pose where it can feel, where you can really be present to. Where it can be like a fun little movement that you can play and explore, and you don't feel like you need to leave yourself in order to get through it. That's a really big thing. So everybody, have you found your tensegral range in all 3 of those positions, everybody? Give me a thumbs up if so. If not, feel free to ask. I'm seeing lots of thumbs ups. Okay. All right, let's do this one as a flow now. So again, if you're new, and sinking the breath into it is going to make it feel like, okay, now I've got too many balls in the air. Drop the breath part and just go with tracking for tensegral range and tracking that, like, am I enjoying this? Am I in this position to a degree where I can really explore it, where I can really enjoy it and feel it and be with it? If it's like, oh God, this is awful, when's it gonna end? That's definitely a sign you're way too far. You're out of tensegral range. So then dial it back so that it's small, small, small. I'm actually gonna demo really, really small on this one, because sometimes when we see it big, then we think we have to go big. So I'm gonna like demo super small. But what I'm inviting you to do is really just find where's your tensegral range. Okay, so let's come into our warrior 2. This is our start. So we can inhale here. And then as we're exhaling, we're coming into that side bend. And then we're going to inhale back to warrior 2 and exhale into the exalted warrior. So we can think every time I'm coming into that warrior 2, I'm inhaling. And every time I'm switching to something different, I'm exhaling. So we inhale into the warrior 2, and then we exhale and we switch. I'm really feeling for that just right range of movement. At this degree of the pose, I can really be with. I can explore it. I can be present with it. And you can even explore, like, just, you know, don't hurt yourself. But if you do go too far, what happens? How do you distract yourself? How do you get through it when you're kind of blowing past your tensegral range? And then come back into your tensegral range. I really like to invite just going with your own pacing and timing. So when you're ready, you can switch to the other leg. So again, that was we inhale with our warrior into our warrior 2. And then we exhale into our side bend. Inhaling warrior 2. And exhaling into that exalted warrior, which is just the side bend the other way. And just because one person mentioned the thing about standing, I'm gonna go through this again seated, just so that you can see how there's other ways to do it, but you guys keep going with doing it in the way that works. But if you wanted to do this one as a seated one, you could be on a chair. Just gonna show you on my little ball, but you could do something like having one knee on the ground. You could even just have yourself in a seat and go side bend to side bend. And so we think about what's the point of this pose and these positions. What are we trying to engage or accomplish? It's really that lateral line. So what we're wanting to give the body is a sense of openness through the side body. So we can pull that off in a lot of different ways. We can do it seated. You could do it laying down. You could even do it without the warrior at all and just side bend. Okay. How's everybody doing? Good thumbs ups. Okay, is there any requests? Do you have a body part that tends to talk to you that you would like to learn a little bit about? How can I work with this body part that's always yelling at me? And feel free to type it in the chat, and then we'll go through maybe 1 or 2 more with just really something specific for a need that you might have. Glutes, shoulders, neck to shoulders, hips, glutes, hips. I'm seeing a theme. Neck, okay. I feel like we could do 2 more, and we could kind of target hips and glutes and then target shoulders. One of the ones I really love for shoulders, we'll do this one seated, as we have been doing a lot of standing, is sit on something, and the way that you choose to sit doesn't really matter for this one, so pick something where you can be really comfortable. I didn't feel like your request was shouty, Lenore. It is a thing though, when someone types in all caps, it's like, are they yelling at me? I didn't think you were. Okay, so find something to sit on or choose a seated posture where you can be comfortable. And let's stick with this theme. This little pose that I'm going to walk you through is a little bit different. We don't necessarily have to stay within tensegral range for it to be effective, but let's keep going with that just so that you really get familiar with that idea of tracking for what's the just right amount of, whether that's range of movement, whether in this case it's going to be contraction. Where does it feel like it's like, okay, this amount of load is the degree to which I can really be with it and really experience it and explore it. And as soon as I increase the load or the range to this much, I check out. I stop being able to be with that position or that experience. Sciatica, okay. Is that like a side joint? I'll put that, oh, is that like SI joint you were saying? I can put that into the hip one.
I don't know the technical details. I just know it hurts.
Okay, yeah, let's just do like sort of like pelvic, because that will cover all those bases. Okay, but we'll start with shoulders. So what this one is really good for, so if your upper traps tend to be in a state where they're holding extra tension, and no matter what you do, you can't seem to get them to relax or let go, what can be really helpful is to contract. It's a little bit counterintuitive. We kind of feel like, okay, if I just stretch them enough, they'll relax. But what can happen is that they're holding a lot of engagement, and but not in kind of like a conscious control kind of way. So when we contract them, what that does is it brings the control back, and then we can release them. So this is for upper traps, kind of neck and shoulders. But what the movement is we bring the shoulders up toward the ears and squeeze, and then slowly let them down. So that's the movement, and I'm going to walk you through a few more steps of it, but before I do, just get a sense of that. So taking the shoulders up, giving them a squeeze, and then slowly lowering them back down. Let's do 2 or 3 more. And this time do it tracking for that tensegral range. So in this case, it's not range of movement. In this case, it's the amount of load. So how much am I squeezing? So what's the just right amount of squeeze that you can find where it feels like you're engaging things, but not where it becomes unpleasant? Is there a just right amount of squeeze where you can actually really be with your shoulders while you do this? And then what's the slowest? How slowly can you release that squeeze and bring your shoulders back to neutral? And then can you let them go just 2% more from there? And then I'll leave you to, this is a really good one to do in a bit of deep mindfulness, so to be really present and aware of what you're doing. So I'll let you explore. Sorry, was there a question? Maybe not. So I'll let you explore for 30 seconds or a minute or so just on your own. So we're going with a squeeze, finding that just right amount. And then as slow as you can, lower. And then at the end, so once your shoulders are back to neutral, can you drop them 2 or 3% more? Can you let them melt a little bit? And then one way to, once you've maybe done that 4 or 5 times, to go into what we were doing earlier with the mindfulness movement. And with this one, what can be really helpful is to just lift and lower, but stopping before you feel any sensation at all. So lifting to the degree like right before you feel any stretch sensation, and lower. And you might want to feel like, you might want to like pull down till you get a stretch, but see if you can just drop down and not, it doesn't have to be any sensation. And then coordinate that with the breath, just 3 or 4 times. So timing the up movement with your inhale and the down movement with your exhale. And then this one is going to be a little bit hard for me to demo because the wall is a bit farther away, but if you have a wall that you can use, there's a really great movement that we can do that also it'll just kind of continue that release through the shoulders, upper back, neck. So if you have a wall nearby, how it looks is and if you were here last week, we did this one last week where we did the squeeze and then the twist. But what we can do is just adding in something to push against. It will really help you get that just right degree of resistance. So for this one, you twist toward the wall. So you're going to twist, like so you're facing, you're kind of parallel to your wall. And then you're going to turn toward, like chest toward the wall. But then what you're going to do is actually go into a twist, but resist it with the wall. This one's super hard to teach over Zoom, so if you don't get it, don't worry about it, but see if you can feel into it. So you're going to be twisting toward a wall with like chest toward the wall, and then a couple things going on. You want to kind of grow yourself nice and tall and use the wall to create a little bit of resistance against. So it's like one part of your body is moving toward the wall, and then you're also moving away from the wall. I'm just going to pretend, let's pretend I have a wall here just so you can see a bit better. So you're twisting, hands on this imaginary invisible wall, and then I'm kind of moving away. So one side I'm going toward, I'm kind of like bringing that left shoulder toward the wall, and then I'm kind of pushing it back with the other hand to create that little bit of resistance. So if you don't have a wall to push against at all, you can just go ahead and do it the way that we did it last week. So if you weren't here, all that we did was we used our hands. We squeezed our hands into each other to create that resistance. This is just another way to do the same idea. So going into a twist and then resist it. And then twist and resist it. And you don't have to hold for a really long time, like when you're in that, and again, it's this tensegral range idea where like this is kind of coming from the PNF or proprioceptive facilitated something, but they'll actually tell you to kind of go to your end range and push as hard as you can. But if we actually factor in tensegrity, we wouldn't want to do it that way. We would want to go into like a really actually mild position and resist it really lightly, and then actually get a sense of how much range do I want, how much resistance do I want, what's that just right balance. Yes, it helps to move the hips away from the wall and the trunk towards. Yeah, it's a stretch and turn action. That's exactly right. You got it. Exactly. I'm curious also, because you've now gone a couple times each side, I'm noticing, did you notice, so if you just kind of go now into your twist, you can have hands together, does it feel like that creating that little bit of resistance changed anything with your range of movement? Does it feel a bit easier to go into that twist? Might be the same. Some people find that to add in that level of resistance will really increase your range of movement. Hips, glutes, legs. So we've already done glute, as far as glute activation for kind of helping them to kind of, you know, turn on like a light switch. We did that with all of those side lunges, but what I'll show you is a way to actually help release a little bit more. And we can use the balls for this. So if you have the rolled up socks handy or your balls handy, you can bring them over. And we'll do this one laying down. With the blocks, so there's a couple ways to use the blocks. If you don't have blocks, you can use pillows. But if you put something under your hamstrings, it can be just a really nice way to kind of set yourself up for the hip release. So I have just one block under each hamstring. You can use pillows. Those big chunky blocks, the bigger yoga blocks can work really well for this one too. Just so that the hamstrings are on something or supported by something. And then with the balls, you can bring the balls underneath the hips in the back. So we're kind of going into that area that Janet was asking about, like the sort of around the SI joints, but where we want to bring the balls is more to the outside. So not right in the middle. If you know where your sacrum is, that's that kind of triangular bone just above your tailbone. You want the balls to be on either side of that bone. So they're in the squishy place in either like the top part of your glute or a little bit lower down. And feel free to really start with getting yourself in a good spot with that. And then once you have that, you can let the legs rest. So you're going into that position where the hamstrings are supported. What I find with once I have the balls there, I'm probably gonna need a little bit more height. So I would probably need 2 blocks under each to have it kind of just right. So really feel free to explore. You might need to go and get some more objects to have that just right amount of support. The hamstring support is really going to help you get the just right degree of pressure on that part of the glute that you're working with. So again, as far as the tensegral range, this time we're going more with input. We're getting what's the just right amount of compression as I let my body weight sink into that object. Is there a way that I can create that just right amount of pressure where again I can really track and can I be with the experience? Are you able to really experience what this is like? And if you find yourself kind of trying to get out of it or to distract yourself, you might want to just vary it a little bit. See what would it be like to have more support under your hamstrings so that that amount of pressure on the glutes is not quite as high. Another option to vary it is to incorporate a little bit of movement. So what you might find is that if you wiggle a little bit, rather than just sinking down and resting, you might get a bit of a better response from the body. And everyone's a little different, so feel free to go with what's right for you. You could just sink, or you can allow the body to move a bit. And a third option is to keep the legs bent. So having your feet on the ground and the knees bent, and then explore a variety of different positions of having that pressure on the back part of your pelvis. Could be higher up, right into the low back. Could be a little bit further out to the sides, which might be a little bit more into the back part of your hip joint, or could be even lower down, kind of targeting those hip rotators. So for some of you who are just doing the sink in and rest, feel free to hang out with that. If you did want to add in a little bit of movement, one thing that's really nice is to rock the pelvis back and forth really lightly. So bringing the tailbone toward the mat and then bringing your low back toward the mat. And that movement can be really, really, really small, like a millimeter each way, and be really effective. If that sort of rocking motion is feeling right for you, you can also coordinate that with the breath so that you're really allowing the pelvis to tip up and down along with the breath, and see if you can find a way that feels really natural. If you're really, you might have explored a few different areas, so feel free to move the balls around and maybe find some other places in your low back. And if it feels finished to do the pressure, you can take the socks or the balls and just place them off to the side. And then we can do a bit of a reclining rebound. So for this one, bring your feet to your mat if they're not already there. And then you're going to use your feet as levers and do just the same way as we did the rebounding when we were standing, but we're just rebounding on our backs. So I'm just using the feet to get the body to kind of rock. And this is a vertical, so it's head to toes. If it feels challenging to get it going with your feet on the floor, the other option is to have the legs straight and to just pump the ankles or the feet, and you can get it going that way. Feel free to hang out with that one as long as you want. I'll maybe just repeat the one we did last week for those of you who weren't here, just because it's such a great one for the hips. For this one, what what we do is we have one leg bent and one leg straight. And I'm going to be drawing circles with my knee, but I'm doing that while I'm tracking. And this time it's not so much tensegral range, but because my goal is to lubricate the tissues, what you want to do is find the size of circle with your knee where you're getting no sensation at all. So zero stretch sensation. You're just doing the circles, drawing tiny circles with your knee. And you might even feel like if you do one large circle and feel like, oh yeah, here's the circle where I feel stretch sensation. And what's the, if I dial that down, what's the size of circle I can do where I'm getting no stretch sensation at all? Just the circle all by itself. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you still have the ball underneath your hip?
I do not. I moved it away.
Right. Thank you.
I mean, you could do this one with the ball, but for the purpose of just kind of like lubricating the joint, it's better to have no sensation at all. And what you'll probably find is your circle will increase, and you'll be able to increase your circle and still not have much of a sensation. We'll hang out with that for maybe 30 seconds to a minute-ish each leg. And then one way to kind of finish before you switch sides is to then go into a little bit of sensation and hold. Like the smallest amount of stretch sensation you can find, and hold there and allow yourself to sink into that. Can you relax into that sensation? Just the teeniest bit of stretch sensation. And when feels like that hip's starting to release, you can switch and do the same with the other leg. If it's feeling a little like if you do have a bit of tenderness in the leg, you can go back, instead of that leg being totally straight, you can support the hamstring with a block again on the one that's straight. And then we're gonna do the circles, finding your, what size of circle can you draw and have no sensation, no stretch sensation at all. And start there. And you don't have to have the hand up too. You can do just the circles all on their own, or you can guide with your hand. And then again, going into your tiniest amount of stretch sensation and hold and soften. And give that hold enough time where it feels like it's starting to melt a little bit, or even just a decrease in the intensity of sensation where it's coming down to feeling quite mild. when that leg feels finished, you can just stretch out on your back. Maybe we'll take a few minutes and come into some rest. So for the relaxation part, you can cover yourself up with a blanket. I always find after movement and then we go to rest, the body can get a little cold. So we'll do 2 or 3 minutes of relaxing, and feel free to take care of yourself so you can be cozy. And once you're comfortable, a really nice way to give your body a chance to integrate your practice is to go back to a bit of breath awareness. And this is an open-ended invitation. Feel free to just kind of sink and melt into your mat and not do anything at all. But if you want a bit of guidance or you want a little bit of something to follow, one really beautiful way to track the breath is to do those when we were finger painting the sideways 8s. So you could do some kind of figure 8 with your breath, where you inhale and imagine you're kind of drawing a loop with your inhale, and then exhale, drawing that bottom part of the loop. And really the shape isn't so important. What really helps with this breath practice is that you're tracking for the transition of one breath into the next. Noticing how the inhale moves into the exhale. Noticing how the exhale eventually becomes the inhale again, even if there's a bit of a pause. There's this point where the inhale becomes the exhale. Can you find that moment? Yeah, if it feels right for you, you can take time to let go of all effort and see how it is to just be with whatever your experience is in this moment. to do just a few minutes of a break so that for those of you who want to stay for the Q&A, you can, feel free to hang out in your relaxation pose for 5 more minutes, or if you need to get up and get a drink or use the washroom, you can do that. But what I'll do is stop the recording now and let you hang out here in your relaxation. And we'll be back in just at 7, so 4 minutes to go into some discussion and Q&A.